People who used to not believe in ghosts but do now. What experience changed your mind? Hey guys, and welcome back to the internet. You know, it's not very often we get to do creepy stories here on this channel, so I think that it's time for another one. So I worked at a public pool. I would work alone after hours cleaning the building and the pool. One night around 2 a.m., I'm cleaning the changing rooms. The pool has been closed for 4 hours at this time. I hear the sound of a child's laughter and bare feet running across the pool deck. I go out and scan the area. There's nobody in sight. The doors are all closed and locked. There is nowhere a kid could be hiding. No wet footprints on the pool deck. I recheck the doors and security monitors. I'm the only person in the building. It was unsettling. Man, I think that finding out that your graveyard shift job is haunted might actually spice it up a little bit. My girlfriend's grandfather's ashes were on a little shelf in the living room, right next to a very solid, heavy angel statue. Well, one weekend, she and I are fooling around on the living room couch, and out of the corner of my eye, I see the angel statue fly off the wall, accompanied with a deep grunt. Now, when I say this thing flew off the wall, I'm talking 7 or 8 feet of air before landing on the hardwood and leaving a dent where the wing hit. Even if this thing had fell off the wall, it would have dropped straight down, not soared with force. Well, we both stood there in shock, and I whispered if she had heard the grunt as well, to which she agreed. So we both booked it for the day. Well, that night at dinner, we told her parents what happened, and Megan's younger sister burst into tears, saying that she's seen a dark figure at the front of her bed the last couple nights, but didn't want anyone to think she was crazy. The grandfather that died had mental issues that caused a lot of pain. Well, after that day, I was a believer. You know, I don't think I've personally experienced anything that paranormal, but I've heard so many stories from so many different people, and while, yes, some of them might be made up, it's hard to believe that they're all made up, or these people are all just delusional. When I was about 10 to 14, I had terrible insomnia. I would imagine things and felt incredibly unsafe, as though I was being watched, although I never admitted this to anyone. I began only sleeping on the couch, with my back against the wall, and had to have the TV on some sort of light. I missed an immense amount of school because of this, so my mom had me see a neurologist. The neurologist diagnosed me with some things, but the crazy part was, during my sleep study, I slept amazingly well. No issues at all. And I slept in the real bed. Eventually I got transferred to a children's hospital, and speaking to the doctor, I explained I would see things, and felt uncomfortable. They had thought that I was experiencing sleep paralysis. When they told my mom, she went ghost white. She pulled me aside and explained she was experiencing things too. She described in detail what I was seeing. That evening, she approached my brother and asked broad questions, like, do you have anything weird happen in home, etc. He also described what we experienced. It was then I realized we must have a paranormal activity, and I believed it ever since. When we moved out of that house, all my sleep issues abruptly stopped, and I haven't experienced it since. Well, that's great when you can actually figure out what the issue is and solve it. You know, ever since I've moved into the place that I'm in now, a couple years ago, I feel like I've had much more wild, crazy, weird dreams that I remember very well. It might just have something to do with it gets a lot darker in here than any of my previous rooms, but most of my most memorable and horrific dreams I've ever had have been since I've lived here. And not only that, there've been lots of times where I've woken up from a dream and practically hallucinated things. I remember waking up in the middle of the night and hearing some crashing sound. I jump out of bed, I turn the light on, I look over at my bed and I see Faye just laying on the bed. And then I walk out of the room and down the hall and then I see Faye just coming out from in front of me. So I was like, wait, what? And I look back on the bed and she wasn't there, so... Yeah, maybe it's just my mental state falling apart, but yeah, I've had a lot of weird experiences here. My wife and I swear that our daughter used to talk to ghosts when she was a toddler. She was an only child at the time. The first instance I remember was her telling me that she was talking to Nana. That's what I called my grandmother, who passed about 15 years before my daughter was born. My daughter was young, and so I hadn't even talked about Nana to her. So I showed her a picture and asked who she spoke to. There were 4 women, 3 of which I didn't know. But without hesitation, she pointed to my Nana. Okay, no biggie. Some months later, my wife and I are trying for baby number 2. After my wife gets pregnant, my daughter is sitting next to her on the couch and puts her head on her belly and says, "Mommy, there's a baby in there." Okay, maybe that's coincidence. She overheard us saying something. A few weeks later, my wife miscarries. Maybe my daughter picked up on our sadness, who knows. But she again puts her head on her stomach and says, "Mommy, there's no baby in there anymore." Then, several months and one more, very early miscarriage later, my daughter tells us, "I was talking to my brother last night, and he said that my sister is coming to live with me soon." Again, she's an only child and had no living brother. We were still trying at this point, but hadn't taken any tests. We picked one up that night, and sure enough, pregnant. When time came to reveal the gender, I wasn't even interested. My daughter had already said it was a girl. Sure enough, I have 2 daughters. Man, that's kinda crazy. I wonder if she will continue to have these, psychic abilities once she grows up. When I was in my late 20s, I was dating my girlfriend, soon-to-be wife. We had been together for a while. One summer, July 3rd, her sister was abducted and killed by a group of 6 men. All of the men were eventually caught and tried. The trials and the aftermath for their family were devastating and debilitating for them for many, many years. Fast forward 3 months after the funeral. I arrived at my girlfriend's house to wait for her to get off her job as the nurse at a local hospital. Neither of her parents were home, just me, alone in the house. So I went into the family room, turned on the TV, sat down in the couch, got comfortable, and began to watch. Clear as a bell, I heard my girlfriend's sister's voice in my right ear, just off my shoulder, call my name. I turned to look at the seat next to me, and of course there was nobody there. I stared at the spot on the couch next to me for a long while. Feeling a bit uneasy, I turned off the TV and went outside to wait on the porch. You know, what I think makes these paranormal spirits so interesting to me is that there doesn't really seem to be any real pattern to them. You know, it's like not every person that dies ends up haunting the place that they lived. And it also seems like even when they do come back and try to make contact, it's not like they are trying to direct a message toward a specific person. Like in this case, why would she be reaching out to her sister's boyfriend? I don't know, the whole thing's just a big mystery. I was always on the fence about ghosts because there was no scientific evidence of them being real. And I was going through a big question phase with religion and afterlife at the same time anyway. But my family moved into an old farmhouse when I was 12. This was a very old farmhouse with a build date of around the Civil War. The original owner's name was still on the old barn out back, and we found numerous old antiques built into the walls when we completely renovated the place. A few odd and end things happened after we first moved in, but distinct things started happening to myself after I turned 16, but never to my sister until after she turned 16 too. The most prominent memory I have. So the upstairs consisted of 2 bedrooms. One bedroom was the room at the top of the stairs, and the second bedroom was in the separate room just to the left at the top of the stairs. I had the private room, and my sister's room was the landing. When someone walked up the stairs, it was very distinct. You could hear each individual step, and the creaks got louder as the person approaching got closer. So one night, I'm sitting on my bed watching TV or something, and I hear my sister come up the steps and go lay on her bed. So I start talking to her. When she doesn't answer me, I get annoyed and go into her room to figure out what her problem is. Only she is not there. My mind was blown because I know I heard her. I call for her, and she'd been downstairs the entire time. We never felt threatened, but it did seem that this entity liked picking only on women. Even my mother, who absolutely doesn't believe in ghosts, had to admit some odd things had happened. I think the funniest thing was having my ponytail pulled while I was doing the dishes. I don't know why it was so funny. It just cracked me up that whatever it was felt like playing with my hair. Yeah, it's really hard to say how you would feel if you had something like this in the place that you lived. Because on one hand, most of these occurrences are very harmless, they're never gonna hurt you. But at the same time, there's just something so eerie and creepy about it that I completely understand if somebody's just absolutely terrified and wants to leave immediately. I saw a reflection at the end of the hallway in a friend's apartment building. Only he told me the day after there was never any mirror in the hallways. I wonder how long he stared at it to tell if it was really moving the same as him. Ooh, I have a story. So in high school, I worked kids' birthday parties. The place was basically a giant gym, and gymnastics/dance classes were also held there. One day, I came in, and one of the girls I worked with, who was very spiritual and very religious, was totally freaked out. During the gymnastics class she taught that morning, one of the kids was staring up at the ceiling. When she asked the kid what he was doing, he said, "There's a little boy up there," and pointed at the ceiling. Strange enough, but whatever, kids are weird. Later, 2 girls who were working a birthday party before mine came out of the gym and were visibly shaken. A pair of 5-year-old twins went down a slide, and when they stared at the ceiling, they both said that there was a little boy up there, in the same spot on the ceiling that the kid from the morning gymnastics class. We all went in and inspected the ceiling. Of course, it was just a regular gray warehousey ceiling, but we were all super freaked out at that point. During my party, I was pushing a little boy on the giant swing we had in the gym. He, too, began to stare at the ceiling. He said directly to my face, "Hey, there's a little boy up there." We told all of our coworkers and managers about 3 separate experiences we had today with children from different parties and classes seeing a little boy on the ceiling. The next day, we had downtime between parties, and nobody was in the gym. There are cameras in the gym that allow parents to see their children playing from the lobby. My manager called us out of the break room. "Guys, check this out." We come out and see the screen, which is streaming from the gym, showing the giant swing going back and forth. Nobody's in there, it's just the swing going. I like to think that the ghost was truly a little boy who just wanted to play, and he finally got to go on the swing. Could be worse. I really wonder why so many of these stories involve only children being able to pick up on this kind of thing. So I was visiting my mother after my dad died. She went shopping with her sister and left me alone. I heard my dad as plain as day up in his room. He got up from his computer chair, walked over to the door, and opened it. He walked down the stairs and stood on the last step for a few seconds before walking back up to his room and closing the door. I was probably 5 feet from him in the living room. I just froze. It scared the heck out of me. I don't know, maybe he forgot something up there. I'm still not sure if I believe, but there have been some weird things in my life that I can't explain. When I was 5 years old, I woke up in the night and my grandma was standing at the end of my bed, wearing a teal blue skirt and a matching blouse. I remember that it was summer and the sky was still light blue, but not light enough for me to read, so I guess it was around 9 p.m. I sat up, she put her finger to her lips, and I rubbed my eyes a couple of times, 'cause sleepy. And when I looked back, she had gone. I just snuggled back under my covers, thinking how nice it was to see her, because I hadn't seen her for ages, and I hoped she would still be there when I woke up. The next morning, my house was eerily quiet. My mom was in a worse mood than normal. She had been crying, so I asked her what was wrong. My grandma died the night before. She had been crossing a road after her bingo turned out, at 8:30 p.m., about 60 miles away from where we lived. She had a massive brain hemorrhage in the middle of the road, and didn't even make it to the other side, let alone to my house 60 miles away. She was wearing a teal blue skirt and a matching blouse. Man, for some people, those dang bingo games is gonna be the end of you. Man, sorry, it's hard to make jokes, and also hard not to make jokes at the same time with a video like this. So once when I was at university, I went to go see my therapist, whom I'd seen twice a week for about 5 months. On this day, he was uncharacteristically quiet, and I asked him if he was alright. He said he was fine, and continued through what would have been one of our most breakthrough sessions. A lot of repressed memories came up through it that have helped me to heal. At the end of the session, I asked him why he was acting differently today than other days. He said when I walked in, I was accompanied by a warrior-like person. He said he had the overwhelming feeling to perform as best he professionally could that day, and that he got the sense this warrior had fought a lot of battles to protect me. This would seem coincidental, except for 10 years later I was living on the other side of the world. I had a Puerto Rican neighbor I would see occasionally, and eventually got pretty close with him and his family. One day, as I was walking by, he kinda gets quiet and weird, and then says in broken English, "Do you know there is a soldier who follows you around?" I knew instantly who he was talking about. In both instances, the warrior/soldier was described the same. Just over 6 feet, blonde curly hair, wearing primitive warrior clothing, and strangely, a white guy. Neither of these people could have known that my closest brother who had passed away at 14 was over 6 feet tall with blonde curly hair, and always was my protector. That's pretty interesting. I wonder why he was always wearing primitive warrior clothing. Most of my family is extremely religious and believe in ghosts wholeheartedly. Most of them claim to have seen something paranormal at some point in their lives. I wasn't very religious, and I always thought to myself, if I haven't seen it, then it's not real. That changed during my senior year in high school. I was dog-sitting at my great-aunt's house while she was out of town for a few days. A little after midnight, I'm watching a movie, and my aunt's dog starts barking like crazy, and runs up the stairs at full speed. The dog was small, but fierce. Suddenly, I clear as day heard a gravely voice at the top of the stairs say, "Bad doggy." The voice was deep and masculine. I went upstairs because I was certain nobody else was supposed to be there. I looked around and there was nobody in sight. The dog was still barking at something that I couldn't see. She was just barking at an empty hallway. That's when I heard footsteps walking away from us down the hall into my aunt's bedroom. I could hear the footsteps, but I couldn't see anybody making them. I noped the F out of that house with the dog and went outside to my car. The dog and I slept there for the night. I'm not entirely sure what I experienced that night, but I definitely believe in the paranormal now. I never told my aunt about what happened, but apparently my great-uncle, her husband, had died in that house a few months after I was born. I never knew him, but I'm willing to bet that it was him who I heard that night. Well, I hope you've made it this far. We've saved the best for last, and this 13th story is... I was on the firefighters working on Ground Zero for 9/11. I lost 2 of my buddies, and it still haunts me to this day. As I was making my way through the rubble, I heard someone screaming. I bolted to wherever I heard the sound, and only found a twisted body on a rebar. The body was burnt and pale. It looked like it had been there for a while. I watched a firefighter walk up the rubble towards me and hug me. I was confused, but I understood why he wanted a hug. I hugged him back, and when I opened my eyes, there was no firefighter. I stood there, holding a helmet. I don't know how I got this helmet, but it was in my hands. The golden eagle on the front had been bronzed, and a hole through the side of the helmet, with dried blood around it. I was holding this helmet in tears, while in front of an impaled civilian. I did some research, and the firefighter that I hugged had apparently died 3 hours before I saw him. I still have that helmet, and I'll never forget the hug that the fallen firefighter gave me. Well, what do you guys think? Do you believe in the paranormal? I mean, even though I haven't experienced anything firsthand, the way I see it is, for you to not believe in the paranormal is to think that we just understand everything about the universe. And I just think that the world is a much more complex place than we can imagine. So I'd be very surprised if there isn't some sort of other dimensional spirits around here. Anyways, that's the end of the video. Faye back here is a little pooped out. She was out all night last night. I found her this morning. Her nose was actually scratched up and all dirty, and her collar is now gone, so yeah, looks like I'll have to get her a new one. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.